space detectives, free thinkers, tea drinkers, and Pareidolia police. Today we are looking at some strange box-like structures and weird objects on Mars that people have found, including myself, over the years. And this is no exception. This was taken, this image, on Sol 64, so that goes back really early in the Curiosity Rover mission, not long after it landed on the surface. And this is sort of in the rock nest area, and can be seen in some of the large rock nest panoramics and stuff like that. So I will have a link to this. Here's the raw image. As you can see, you can download this. Links will be below for the main images. And if there are any other links that you want, feel free to ask, no problem. Here it is, center right of image. It's not very large. I would say this whole thing is probably about a foot or two across. This is kind of like a double structure here, and it's very strange, and I don't really know what it is. I call it the letterbox, but it's not a letterbox. My original post of this object was back in May the 27th, on my page, ArtAlienTV Mars magazine. As you can see here, there's the original post, and other people have spotted it as well. It's fairly blatant, this thing, but I was reminded by someone else who posted it on another group recently. But there's my original post anyway, and this is weird, and I don't really understand what it is. But I'm also going to show you some other box-like structures, like this thing, and there's some crazy stuff in here as well, from the same sort of area as well. Okay, so there's lots of these things lying around. Some are sort of up against ridge lines, like this here. Some are lying out in the open, like this thing here. And some of them are quite small, some of them are quite large. So without further ado, let's have a look at the folder, and I'll just flick through some of these things. There's that image I just showed you. And what we have here is basically a very strange box with a slot in it, with something coming out of it here. And this whole structure here is kind of joined to this thing behind it, which seems to be split in half, which also has something weird coming out of it here, which almost looks like molten plastic or some kind of material that then comes down and joins onto this bit. It's very odd. I don't really understand what it is, but what it does remind me of is some kind of aircon sort of system or something like that, that's from a wrecked ship or from a wrecked building. And what's happened is it's been ripped apart and melted and petrified, almost like vitrified, I should say. It kind of melted in extreme heat, because you've got these kind of sagging structures coming off the side of it. I'll show you what I mean here, because it's a bit hard to get your head around this, because it's a very abstract looking object, and it doesn't immediately make any sense at all. But actually, let's darken that up, because this doesn't really stand out enough. And what I'll do is I'll darken it up a bit, just to see if we can get a bit more definition in the image. There we are. Let's go back to that. Yeah, that's okay. Now, it's not a pure rectangle or square. It's kind of an odd shape that comes around like that, and you've got a slot here, which is rectangular, but it's kind of, because the object's sloping back a bit, it doesn't immediately look like a rectangle, but it is. And we've got this rather strange fork-shaped finger structure coming out, like that, and there, okay? Now what the hell could that be? And then we've got this part sticking up here, and then I think the top of it's kind of like that, and it comes back, and it's joined. You can see it a join there. It's joined to that, comes up, that comes right out there. This seems to be broken, or maybe, don't know. But there's another entrance or kind of hole there by the looks of it, and this part here seems to be hanging down like this, and then joins to this, which is a kind of part on the side of here. Now, this doesn't make any visual sense to me. I have no idea what this is. So, Pareidolia police, bring it on. I mean, there is pareidolia, of course there is, and often these things are just rocks. And a lot of people post things that are blatantly rocks that just look a little bit like a face, or a little bit like a car, or a little bit like this, a little bit like that. I don't tend to publish things that only look a little bit like something. I tend to publish things that really do look like something intelligent, and they're blatantly not just a random rock, you know. And this is, I think, a good example. You've got these parts here, and there's a sort of triangular part coming up there. You see what I mean? Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I appreciate that, because it's broken and wrecked. And I've been saying for many years now that there may have been a tsunami in this area, and a lot of these objects are bits of wreckage that have been deposited in the very low part of Gale Crater here, which is miles below the surface. Now, if there was a tsunami on Mars, it would have washed into this crater, and all the mud and crap would have gone into the bottom of the crater and formed into clays and solidified and dried out and whatever over thousands of years. And some of these objects are clearly made of stone and carved, but some of them look like metal, and some of them look like wood. There is petrified wood in here, but the main thing with this really is the fact that we've got this thing hanging down here, which looks like a piece of melted plastic or metal or something, and this thing sticking up here. Now, what the hell is that sticking up? That sort of V-shaped structure, like almost like two fingers or two kind of. Could it be a creature? I doubt it. Let's go a bit darker and see if I can get a bit more shadow in there. Let's go brighter now. Yeah, that'll do. Let's try and exaggerate the image to try and push it a bit so you can see that quite clearly now. What the hell is that? And now you can see this a bit more clearly. This kind of weird thing hanging down. It's got a part to it there, like a sort of melted tube, or I don't know. I really don't know what it is. So, you know, any ideas? Any of you got any ideas out there? Please leave a comment below. I don't claim to know what all these things are. This is speculation, of course, and of course we can't really prove what any of these things are until we actually go there and take samples. So this is pure speculation, but it kind of looks clearer in the raw image now. You can really see that V-shaped thing sticking up. Those two kind of like finger things. So there we are. I mean, that was weird. So let's go quickly on to some of the other similar things I've got here. This is a video I did a while back. What year was this? 2016. Old TV set on Mars. Now, it's probably not a TV set, but it looks like one. Okay? I'm just going to show you a part of that now. This is a box structure, but that happens to have a top to it here. It almost looks like a suitcase with a kind of handle, but it's not. It's a box, and you've got a curved part, inner part here. Let's pause that a minute. Ignore that. That may be a statue part or something. We're not looking at that. The reason I call it a TV set, because it seems to have a screen here, which is lighter than the side here, which is very symmetrical. You've got these parallel parts to it, which means it's probably not just a normal rock. And it almost looks like a broken screen on here. I'm not saying it is, but it kind of looks a bit like that. There's a couple of clips of it here. I mean, it's not very clear. It's another one of those objects that's quite small and a bit too far away for us to really make any real sense out of it. But there was also this thing. Now, this is another video I did a year or two ago, probably a couple of years ago. Yeah, 2016. So yeah, this is called Mars Dragon Head, and this is the thing I call the Dragon Head. Now, I'm not saying it is a dragon head. I'm saying it's shaped like a dragon head, or what we presume dragon heads used to be shaped like. This thing here, it looks like a big eye socket here, and a nose here, and a mouth, the kind of thing sticking out like a tongue. Really odd. It's probably just something random. But as we're on the subject of boxes, we have a box here. Now, this is very dark. It's in heavy shadow, but this is hollow. And if you imagine an old metal box that's probably ripped in half and then eroded and sort of rusted away, this is what it looks like. It should brighten up now. When it brightens up, you'll see it. There's the raw image. You can actually see it. This is hollow. You've got a side of the box here, the front here, and this is all kind of torn and rusted away. I really don't think all these things are rocks because some of it's blatantly manufactured looking, but of course very eroded and ancient. Now this was an interesting one. Now other people have spotted this as well. This is from Sol 710, and we have a box here. Now this is another image that doesn't make a lot of visual sense, especially if you look at it too closely like that. So let's go a bit further back. There we are. I think this was done by Neville Thompson, so credit to Neville Thompson for this, for compiling these images. There we are. I mean, you've got a load of jumbled rocks, and then you have a ridge line at the back here, and a lot of the debris and stuff's kind of fallen down and broken. And then smack in the middle of here, we've got a box. Now, is it part of this here? Or is it part of this over here? This is an optical illusion. It's very difficult to tell whether this is a hole or the entrance to a box or the edge of a box. Now, if we look at the shadows on here, the shadows are kind of coming this way, so the light is probably above. It's a sort of midday-ish kind of photograph because these shadows are coming straight down. They're not coming side to, or one side or the other. So it looks like this is the object and this is hollow. In other words, you could put your hand inside this hole here, this square hole, and there would be a hollow box. It's not a complete box shape, it's kind of got a rounded shape here. Very odd indeed. Let's look at the bigger image again because it may make a bit more sense visually when you see the whole area. Okay, there we have it, just there. Now, what would a box be doing right there? I hear you ask. I have absolutely no idea. But like I said, a lot of this stuff may be tsunami wreckage or some kind of wreckage that was left behind after the cataclysm on Mars, whether that was a massive explosion or what. It may well have been, because a lot of these things do look melted. So there's that, and there was also this thing, which I found a while back. Now this also looks like a metal box that's eroded and heavily aged and rusted. It's got two sections to it. You've got the back section and another section here, and all this is kind of eroded away and broken away. And I've done some enhancements of it here. You can see some quite good detail. It's hollow. In other words, if you put your hand in here, you could stick your hand inside. It's hollowed out. Really interesting detail on here. As you can see, it's a box. Now, it's sort of a narrow box shape, and it's hollow inside. You can actually see into it here. So it's not a solid rock. And why would a rock have a sort of squared out hollow part to it here, which you could slot your hand in there? Now this probably was underwater as well, so that would explain some of the structuring on here, where it looks like it's encrusted with mineralization. Okay, but that's interesting because you've got some really nice detail in here. That looks like a box. There's this other thing that someone else, lots of people have posted this on Facebook in the last year or so. I've seen a number of people post this. I think Martine Graney did, and lots of other people have spotted it. It's really, really odd. Doesn't make any visual sense either, but this also looks like a torn up metal box that's eroded and parts of it have broken off. And you've got these jagged metallic parts here with a kind of wrecked, torn structure that comes up and kind of joins up to here. It's really odd. And I have no idea what this is either, but it's really interesting. It doesn't look like a rock. I mean, if you saw that on the beach, you'd think, wow, it's some wreckage. It's blatantly wreckage. What it's actually part of, no idea. So any ideas on that one, please leave a comment. I don't know. So there's a number of these things, and some of them look very ancient and maybe millions, or well, I would say many thousands of years old at least. There's also this weird thing here which I've just dug up, which doesn't make any visual sense either. And now this may also be an optical illusion. Now what we have here is a rather strange rocky outcrop here, which is kind of broken off at the end, and then we have this thing. Now, I still can't work out what's going on with this. Let's go to the further back image. Now, this is from Sol 1243, and you've got some very weird optical tricks going on here. Now, this is a really strange image. What happens is when you have low-res images with this orange filter on, it destroys a lot of the shadow detail and definition. And it's very hard to work out whether things are coming, whether that's sticking out this way and hanging over, or that's actually a hole that you could kind of crawl into. Now, this is obviously a shadow here, and this is obviously a shadow here. But the way that it comes round, like this, looks very unnatural and very strange. It almost looks to me as if the image has been tampered with in such a way as to cover up something. It doesn't make any visual sense, so I really don't understand what's going on there. But that's a good example of what happens a lot with these low-res images, where the shadows play tricks with your eyes and you kind of see weird things that may not be there. But there's some very straight parts to this, and I do suspect that that is something, a bit of wreckage or something, and it's just the way the sand has kind of come up against it, that kind of looks really odd and almost fake looking, with the way you've got this line here. See that line? It comes right round. So that was weird. So there are lots of these things. I've probably got one or two more actually in other videos that I haven't got here, which I could show you. But I mean, this is the most blatant box looking thing ever, one of them. Look at that. I mean, it doesn't make any visual sense, but it's a box. So there we have it. This is the main one, obviously. I don't understand what we got here, but that, to me, coming out of a slot. Let's try that again. That was pretty poor. This mouse isn't brilliant. It's a little bit old, and the tracking on it's gone a bit. But yeah, what the hell is that sticking out of this, what I called a letterbox? And there's a bit of detail here. Let's go. It's there, okay? Can you see that? There's an object there. So that is weird. And the way it kind of joins up to this thing is very strange indeed and doesn't make any visual sense, but that is partly due to the fact that the image is out of focus. Let's bring that in a bit there. That's joined to that. Comes up to there. You've got that weird detail there on the end. And that joins to this. But it's almost like the image has been deliberately kind of blurred, and there's no sharp definition to it whatsoever. Like I said in the previous video, I think a lot of these images were taken on the move, or at least there was vibration on the camera, which has caused the image to blur, because it really does look like motion blur to me. When you deal with images a lot, like I do, and I have been for many years, you get to spot these things, and it looks like motion blur. So that would explain partially why the images look so fuzzy. Not only do they put this orange filter over everything, which destroys the shadow detail and definition, but they're blurred. You can see the blur. It looks soft focus almost, like some of those dodgy TV shows from the 1980s, which were done in a kind of soft focus to make everyone look nice and hide their blemishes. A bit like that. And of course, the orange filter is very good at hiding green colour, because when you put orange over something, it destroys the green information, largely. So if there's anything growing on any of these rocks and objects, like lichen or moss, it hides it straight away, and you just won't see it at all. That's, I think, the reason for the orange filter. It's not there really to gather infrared information, as NASA claim. I think it's purely an obfuscation device to cover up greenery and growth on these objects and rocks, because I have showed it on many occasions. It's hard to spot because it's very small, but in many of these images you can see things like fungi and low-level vegetation. Their years are much longer than ours, almost twice as long. So their summer lasts about 8 or 9 months or something, probably longer, I don't know exactly. But best part of a year, I'd imagine, probably about 9 or 10 months. So this can be seen from space, and people have taken images of Mars when it goes green, and then it goes back to its normal brownish colour after that in the winter. So there we are. What do you think this is? Is it a box? Is it some kind of, like I suggested, is it some kind of part of an aircon system or boat or building that's wrecked and been smashed to pieces and melted and just kind of ended up in the bottom of this crater, sitting there for us to find many thousands of years later? So, as I often say, when viewing images from other planets, an open mind is required, because one day our very survival may depend on it. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you soon.